Hi again from Central Virginia. Said I was going to do it, and now it's time to do it. I need to clean up this back garden, this outside of my garden here. In the foreground, you see my Ruth Stout Bed, and I'm just going to start with that one. That one's going to be super, super easy. I'm literally just going to clip out those vines and put some hay down. So let's get at it. First things first, let's get these old vines up. These are the pumpkin vines, and they went everywhere. While I'm down here, I'm just searching for any little bits of weed. There's not much in here. I'm going to leave the roots right in the ground for most of these. Woo! I put potatoes in this last year. You can check that on my channel. I just did an experiment to see whether I could actually get a Ruth Stout bed going, and I did. This was just grass here, and I had some hay bales sitting here. This bed was amazingly productive, as I've said previously in videos. It was, it gave me great potatoes, good yield, just from some store-bought potatoes that I had there. I'll bring you in closer, and you can see how good the soil is underneath this Ruth Stout bed. It's just amazing. Super rich and friable, and the hay just did a beautiful job of composting down. Fortunately, I did not have any particular problem with pests in this bed, neither in the potatoes nor the pumpkins that came later. And the pumpkin yield was fantastic. I had two pumpkin plants in here. One was the Seminole pumpkin, and one was the Cinderella pumpkin, and they did great. So really, all I'm going to do for this bed is pile up a bunch of hay. That's it. And I'm just going to see how this does in year 2. Let's go ahead and get the hay on there. Move these out of the way. They'll go into the compost. These vines were like so long. Spoiled hay. I'm really just going to put it down nice and thick on this bed, and it's going to compost down over the winter, and in March I'll be planting more potatoes in here, just like I did last year. Could not be easier. This is old what's called spoiled hay. I have deliberately left it out, and it's already started the composting process. I get my hay locally from a person I know and trust. Thank you, Dave and Claire. I think Claire is watching. And I have been so happy with the way that it has worked in my garden. I know there is a big controversy about using hay in a garden, and I would just say 2 important things. 1, know your source. 3 important things. 1, know your source. 2, know your source. And guess what 3 is? Know your source. Why is that important? Well, hay is grown as a crop in many places. It's a feed crop for animals. And so hay producers want to produce the grasses that they want to produce, and they don't want to necessarily produce weeds or other things. And so many of them will spray it with persistent herbicides that are there to destroy other weed seeds and things like that. The problem with that is that it doesn't break down, and it doesn't break down in the soil, and it doesn't even break down when the animal eats it in its digestive system. So if you happen to have a hay with grazon on it or something like that, one of these persistent herbicides, then you can end up killing what's in your garden with the hay that you use. So know your source, and I think you're okay. This is my 3rd year. This was my 3rd garden season using hay from this source, and it's been fantastic. The second thing that people say is if you use hay, you're going to get a lot of weeds. That has not been my experience. I'm not going to say that it never happens, because I'm sure it does, which is why people say you're going to get a lot of weeds. Because the hay, to be nutritious, has to have the seed heads on it. But I have found that that is really not a problem. Anything that sprouts, I just pluck it out very simply, because it's not going to go deeply rooted in the ground. Anything that's down there underneath here is not going to see the light of day. And so it's not going to sprout either. So you just want to pile your hay up good and high. And I'm going to put some more on here. And that should be okay. Hey, hey, what do you say? And I want it nice and thick. This is going to compost way down. Way, way, way down. So you might think I'm piling it on thick. I am. And guess what? I'm going to pile it on a little thicker. It's really great to be outside. I have had such a rugged, health-wise, kind of a hard time this late fall, just with, as I mentioned in several videos, COVID, and just not getting over that well and not getting my strength back. And that makes me sad to not be outside. It really impacts my mental health. And so I am determined to really get myself out here. It's good for your spirit, good for your soul, and good for your garden. I surely am going to miss the gardening in the wintertime, but I'll be spending more time in the city during the winter, and I'll be bringing you different kinds of videos during the winter time. I'll also be doing some seed starting, so I'll show you what I'm doing for that. There are loads of things on the internet about starting seeds and all that, so I know that you won't have a problem finding information, but I'm happy to add my 2 cents worth in. It's probably worth about that 2 cents. You can see I'm piling this up about a foot high. I think that side needs a little bit more, don't you? Hey, hey, what do you say? Mom joke. Sorry. Had to do it. Had to do it. Couldn't help myself. All right. Really pack this down so I don't get any weeds or anything like that in there. Hello, mine. Look at the size of this thing. All right. These are all going to come off. They're ready. So I'll just say a couple of other things about the Ruth Stout Bed. You can see how high I've piled up the hay. My experience last year was that this hay just composted down all through the winter. When I was ready to plant potatoes in March, I did just that, and I harvested them in, I guess, mid-June, and they were great. What struck me the most was I only had about 4 potatoes in that whole bunch that were attacked by some kind of pest, whether they were slugs or rodents or whatever. And that compares to one of my other beds that I did last year. That was more of a traditional bed in which every single potato was eaten to the core. So that made me happy that worked. I think that this is a great method, has been a great method, and I'm really curious. I'm going to try it again next year here, and I'm going to expand it a little bit in some other areas. And hopefully I will be able to move more of my gardening over to this method. I think the key is mulch, mulch, and more mulch. And as my potatoes grew, I kept putting more mulch on top of that during the growing season as well. When it came time to plant the pumpkins, I just pulled it apart, plunked those plants right in there, and they grew like crazy. So this is my experiment with my Ruth Stout method, which worked for me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're well. Take care. Bye. Oh, mine. Look at the size of this thing.